I've got a few hypothetical things that will happen at some point in some company's life, but just from a small
Yeah.
business labor law perspective, we're seeing potentially recession for 2023, if depending on who you talk to, and depending on what industry you're in. How do you handle, obviously you see these layoffs that are happening at huge tech companies, and they have entire teams of labor attorneys on their, on their companies. But if you did have to do a mass layoff for your company and let go of half of your people, how is it different for the small business owner? What's feasible for them, and what are they actually required to do in those circumstances?
Sure. Well, for the small business owner, there are not a whole lot of legal affirmative requirements. And I say that because the WARN Act applies to certain employers. And so if employers have above a certain number of employees or are closing a plant that's a large part of their business and has a certain number of employees, there's different thresholds for the WARN Act to apply. Then employers are obligated to provide notice to the employees that this may be happening, as well as to state and city officials usually of impending layoffs. That's of a larger stage. So the layoffs you're reading about in the news, those
Right.
are all subject to WARN Act requirements as well. Most small businesses don't have WARN Act requirements. So then you're just looking at, one, do I have any contract requirements? Do I have employees that have severance provisions in employment contracts they have? Do I have, sometimes I'll see handbooks that have severance provisions in them, which should not be a thing, but they're out there. And so do I have anything in my employee handbook that obligates me to provide any sort of severance? Then is there a reason to provide severance? A lot of times if it's a RIF or a layoff, not of the employees, doing, where the company's having, the numbers aren't there and they don't have the financial resources. And so a layoff is, and usually I've worked with them up to that point to try to do other things to get them in place before you actually get to the layoff, early retirement incentive programs, things like that. But if it is to a point where we now have to lay off individuals, you just want to make sure you do so in a legal, and by that I basically mean non-discriminatory manner. So, you're not laying off your 3 oldest employees or your 3 females, your 3 minority, the person that had a workers' comp claim last year and 3 other people in a different department. You want to make sure that there's that it's applied consistently. You're looking at, a lot of times years of service, pay, the job, the particular departments, and the organization of the company. So you're looking through you just need to be cognizant and work through those issues. Depending on the size, I see a lot of spreadsheets of here's our current employees with, their age, their gender, their, kind of going through your protected categories. And then, here's our proposed, individuals to lay off. Now here's what our new, average looks like in all those categories, and make sure that there's not a whole lot of variance among those categories. Again, depending on size, that's probably not necessary if you're looking at, 15, 20 individuals or less. But, beyond that, I think it's helpful to have that sort of analysis to make sure there's no, unintentional discrimination that's occurring
Yeah.
as well. And that's where you get a lot of issues where there really may not be intentional discrimination, but then when you actually look at the numbers, it makes it really hard to defend if the numbers don't support
Yeah.
that.